There we go. All right, everybody, welcome. This is our August ALM, Association of Leaders in Lifelong Learning for Ministry webinar. ALM is your community of practice, your resource provider, and your think tank for all things having to do with lifelong learning for ministry. My name is Helen Blyer. I have the privilege of serving as the president right now for ALM and the convener of this fabulous group of people who all do lifelong learning for ministry. And we've got one of our folks today who will be leading this webinar. Before we do that, just please take a note that the webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the ALM website after today. If you've got questions today, you can use the raise hand function just so that we're not talking over each other. It's found at the bottom under the React button on your screen, or you can put things in the chat. Like if you're the kind of person who's kind of thinking in process and you want to put your thoughts down before you lose them, go ahead. I'll be monitoring the chat while Lindsay is talking. Now let's go ahead and introduce our presenter today, Reverend Dr. Lindsay Andreolli Comstock, who is a friend and a colleague and a friend to ALM. She serves as one of our at-large board members on the executive team. She's also the president and principal consultant for the School of Global Citizenry and the managing director for TUMBU. It's a pleasure to have her here today. So glad that she's going to be sharing her wisdom with us. Lindsay, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to try to do this magic sharing thing we have here. And can everyone see that okay? All right. I apologize for looking at a different, away from you, and it's a different thing. I've got multiple screens and I'm still learning the wonderful world of technology, which seems to be evolving faster than I'm learning. But thank you, Helen. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you here. Well, today we are talking about the basics of adult learning theory. This is a monthly ALM webinar, and it really is just such a privilege and an honor to be part of this ALM community. I have learned so very much from my colleagues, and I always am very grateful when I get the opportunity to share some of my insights as well. But today we're going over the basics. This is going to be an introductory webinar. So for those of us who are seasoned, it can be what I like to say, sometimes course correcting. It can be good reminders of the basics and doing them well. And we will also talk about, and I'll get into it in just a moment, some new things that are emerging. So as we move forward, let me see if I can get my screen. Just a little bit more about me. Helen, thank you for the introduction. I don't serve in a traditional theological school like many of you. So I am one of those people within the ALM community that serves in essentially a third space, if you will. So I do have 23 years of nonprofit and for-profit experience. And for the last 15 years have been working as an instructional designer, e-learning developer, learning experience design consultant, all of those many interwoven roles. I am an ordained clergy person, former pastorates in Virginia and Massachusetts in the United States. I currently live abroad. I live in Europe. And through my work, both founding and managing an educational design company called TUMBU Global, we work specifically with theological schools, judicatories, denominations, church and nonprofit leaders, as well as government support contractors. And my caveat on that is that used to be something people were very proud of, and now it's a little complicated. But we do try to support those doing the good work of support services like housing the not housed and things like that. So those are who we work with, and a little bit more about me. Just wanted to pause quickly because sometimes this gets chopped off at the end, and that is to let you know how to get in touch with us. This is an ALM supported webinar. At the top there, you can get in touch with us. We've put Helen's email address because we want you to have that intimate firsthand welcome from her right off the bat, but feel free to visit our website. If you're not a member, we would encourage you to be one because this is just one of many things that we do. Resourcing those who are brand new to lifelong learning and also continuing the conversation for those of us who have been doing this for a while. Because if anything is consistent, it is that it's always changing, right? And then also, if this is helpful to you, or you find that my perspective is different and helpful to you, you're welcome to contact me. I have websites for my design firm as well as our online school that we run, and then emails for both, or you can just contact my personal website if that's helpful. I'll post this again at the end, but we just wanted to make sure we've upfronted that in case you have to miss the end of this. So our agenda for today, again, is that we're going to be doing a basics, an introduction to adult learning theory, or andragogy. We're going to talk about why it matters, what influence it has on lifelong learning for those of us in this particular space. And then I'm going to touch on at the end how the emergence of AI is impacting how we teach adults. Now, again, I say touch because we're just going to address some of the ways in which it's kind of making life a little complicated or making our days a little bit busier, but we know that's an evolving, much larger conversation. So really it's kind of spur conversation on for more of our seasoned folks. But for those of you where this might be brand new, know that you are in welcome space. We're glad you're here. Before I get started, I know we had a number of people sign up who may be waiting on the recording, but for those of you who made the time and space to be here, I'd love to get to know you. I would love for you to share perhaps your name, maybe where you are in the world, who you work for, and would you be willing to share with us how long you've been working in lifelong learning? And it can be in a formal capacity or in an informal capacity. And I would say, unless Helen has another recommendation, just unmute yourself. And if you want to share, we'd love to know who you are.
Probably best to begin with, I don't know, raise hand function. Actually, I can also call on people because I'm seeing them in order so folks don't talk on top of each other. I'll start with Karen.
Hello, I'm Karen. I'm the Reverend Dr. Karen Peterson Finch. And I teach at the Presbyterian College of Montreal, and we build our program with the School of Religious Studies at McGill. So I also teach at McGill in Montreal. I'm an American. I've been here 4 years, and I have a lot of teaching experience in the past in what we called at the time adult education at the university I was part of before. So programs for working adults that were set in different kind of scheduling parameters and were expected to be pedagogically appropriate to that population. And I learned a lot there. And I also I taught what we would call lay people. And I'm here today because Adrian, who is also on this Zoom, is the director of our leadership center at the college. And we are trying to find new ways to support lay learning in congregations in the Presbyterian Church of Canada.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen.
We'll go to Adrian since you got called out.
Yeah.
Oh, Adrian, we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but for some reason the sound's not coming through. Can't hear you. We'll invite you to put your answers to the question in the chat then. That might be the easiest thing to do. Going then to Daryl Stevens.
Hi, I'm the Reverend Dr. Daryl Stevens, and I direct lifelong learning programs both within a church setting as well as a university setting. And I've put those in the chat. So the Leadership Academy Preaching Institute and the Conference for the United Methodist Church and the Compass Lifelong Learning Program at the School of Theology at Moravian University. And I am also an Allen board member.
Thanks, Daryl.
Lori, we'll go over to you.
Sure. Reverend Lori O'Leary, I am a minister in the United Church of Canada. I currently serve in a small rural congregation in southwestern Ontario. I've been involved in adult education for, I dare say, a long time. We'll leave it there. both in a church setting within the United Church of Canada and in a prior context when I was a member of cooperative housing in Canada as well. So looking forward to learning today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lori.
Doris.
Oh, you see
Sorry.
other people. I don't see other people. Thank you, Helen.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm Doris Garcia Rivera, Reverend Dr. Doris Garcia Rivera. I am actually in Puerto Rico. It's very hot and humid. And I am also the academic coordinator for Pathways at Lexington Theological Seminary. I'm also a contingent faculty in Hebrew Bible and Mission and Evangelism. I am a former president of an ATS school here in Puerto Rico. And what else? I have been in what we call continuing education for years. As a missionary, I worked for 23 years in Central America with indigenous people, with Mexican, Costa Ricans, and I developed several programs for ministers and lay people. And that's it. So I love continuing education, long life learning. I am a member of Alum and proud of it. Thank you.
Excellent.
We'll go now to Jeff McDonald.
Yes, hi. Jeff McDonald here. I am a religion journalist. I cover religion. I write books and articles, and I also serve as a part-time pastor of a United Church of Christ congregation. I'm a UCC minister, and my research interests have grown increasingly related to ministry and the ways the landscape of ministry is evolving. And so I've written one book and I'm working on a second one about part-time clergy and the congregations that they serve. And so that's led me into this area where you write articles and books and people start wanting you to lead courses and teach workshops. And so I've figured out that I need to learn a few things about pedagogy and how to create that type of learning experience. So research has driven me here, and I'm looking forward to learning more.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeff. Lance, I don't see your image, but are you able to join us by voice? We'll move then to Megan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan De Dios. I'm the Director of Continuing Education at the Boston College Clough School of Theology and Ministry. We're in Boston, Massachusetts in the US, and this is my 7th year doing that. Happy to be with you all.
Excellent.
And I think that's everyone in, Lindsay.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm amazed by two things when I get in these spaces. The fact that we use this technology all the time, and yet we still can't catch up with every new thing. So like I see 3 people on my screen and apparently there's 15 of you all. So one, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I wish I could see everyone. I don't know why I can't. And secondly, I'm struck by just how many roles we fill in this industry. Lifelong learning very rarely ends up being one title. And so many of us fill so many important roles. And so I just want to acknowledge that so many of you wear so many hats and they're probably so very important. So you taking the time to be here, it honors me. So I want to give that honor back to you and say welcome. Well, if we know anything about adult learning, and if you don't, that's perfectly fine. Again, this is an introductory. But if you know anything about adult learning, you know that we can't really begin without talking about Malcolm Knowles. Now, caveat, I grabbed this image because I liked the artistic nature of it before realizing he had no eyes. So apologies for Malcolm Knowles with no eyes. But we have to begin with Malcolm Knowles. He was a prominent American educator who is widely considered the father of adult learning theory or adult education. I would say that folks in other cultural contexts in other parts of the world might name someone else in that category. But from my context, this is who I learned about as the father of adult learning theory. A former national director of adult education for the YMCA and a professor at Boston University, he spent his entire career challenging the traditional notion that adult learners should be taught in the same way as children. And his work culminated in the late 1960s with popularizing the term andragogy or andragogy. I'm learning that depending on what part of the world you're from, you may say that differently. Distinguishing it from pedagogy, the art and science of teaching children. Now, the distinction for me, I think, between these two terms is really crucial. And if we dig into the original Greek, of which I am no expert, but the original Greek, those roots teach us something there. So if we look at the word pedagogy, it comes from the Greek word paidagogos, meaning to lead the child, or paidos, or the child. This etymology reflects the traditional teacher-centered model of education, where the instructor is the expert and the child is a dependent learner that is poured into. And I see Doris nodding her head. Knowles, however, argued that this model is not appropriate for adult learners for a number of reasons that we're going to get into later. And to articulate a different approach, he embraced the term andragogy, derived from the Greek word andragogos, meaning to lead the man or lead the adult. This simple linguistic shift highlights a profound change in our educational philosophy. It moves the focus from a teacher-centered process to a learner-centered process, recognizing the adult as an autonomous, self-directed individual. Knowles' foundational work on this topic came in his 1970s book, The Modern Practice of Adult Education, Andragogy versus Pedagogy. And in this text, he systematically lays out his core assumptions about who adult learners are and what makes them unique. And in many respects, a lot of people would say this book was a seminal moment for the field of education, providing a comprehensive framework for educators of all kinds, whether you be a corporate trainer or a community educator or even a person working in theological lifelong learning. But the book wasn't just a theoretical treatise. It was a practical guide that even to this day provides a blueprint for us for designing learning experiences that truly resonate with adults. And for me, I would imagine that's why a lot of us are here, either to get a refresher on that or to learn how to do that well for the first time. So, Malcolm Knowles identified 6 core assumptions about adult learners that form the foundation of his theory of andragogy. These assumptions highlight how adults are fundamentally different from child learners and therefore require a distinct educational approach. Okay, so number 1, we're just going to go through these. He called it need to know. Adults need to understand why they are learning something. They don't want to engage learning for learning's sake or for some sort of future application. Adults need to know why now. They need to know what's in it for them and how the new knowledge or skill can be immediately useful. And we'll talk about later the characteristics of adults that make that be the case. Need to know. The second is a self-concept. And as individuals mature, they move from being dependent personalities, children, to becoming self-directed human beings. Adult learners want to be treated with respect and have a say-so in their adult learning. And they resist learning that feels imposed on them, that may treat them like some sort of passive receptacle as if they have nothing to offer. And any of you who've been involved in lifelong learning probably see this almost immediately. Adults have something to bring and they know it. Third is prior experience, and this is why they act that way. This is why our adult learners posture in this manner. Adults bring a vast and rich reservoir of life experiences to the learning environment. And this experience is not only a valuable resource for them, but it's a resource for every single one of the other students in the room, because effective adult learning leverages that experience through a number of different methods like discussions or case studies or reflection by making us co-collaborators in the learning process. The fourth assumption from Knowles was readiness to learn. Adults are most ready to learn when they encounter some sort of developmental task or some sort of problem in their social role that requires that they learn or acquire some sort of new knowledge or skill. Or sometimes there's just simply a gap. And I know that for many folks who have an MDiv, they're going back for lifelong learning because there was a gap in some sort of learning that they never received. And so they're filling that hole with continuing education. Their readiness is triggered by some sort of real life need. Number 5 is orientation to learning. Adults are problem centered rather than subject centered. And I coach a lot of people on course design. And one of the things is I have to explain to folks, people don't want to just take a course because it's a trendy topic. They need to learn something. They need to know how it's filling some sort of void in their life. They don't want to just learn for the topic. They want to know how it applies. Is it addressing a problem, filling a hole? What is it doing, and how is it affecting their life, work, or their family? And then lastly, internal motivation. And I have to say, I think this is probably one of the most compelling ones in my experience with adult learners. And that is, while children are often motivated by external pressures, whether it be grades or parental pressure, adult learners are primarily driven internally. We have these internal motivations that tell us that we want to get more knowledge. We want to acquire more knowledge, whether it be for professional development or our own self-esteem. Maybe it's for some sort of promotion and growth. Maybe it's just for quality of life. But those motivators are huge for adult learners. Based on his core assumptions about adult learners, Malcolm Knowles then developed 4 key principles for designing and implementing adult education. And these principles serve as a practical guide for educators like us to create effective learning environments that align with the unique characteristics of andragogy. So we're going to go through some of those 4 principles. The first one is learner-centered design. This shouldn't be surprising based on what we've talked about thus far. Learning programs should be structured to be highly participatory and collaborative, involving learners in the planning and evaluation of their own learning experience when possible, because this respects the adult's need for self-direction. For example, instead of a rigid syllabus, a course might allow learners to choose which topics to explore in greater depth or to design their own final project. This allows them that autonomy and lets it be a learner-centered design process. Next is experiential learning. The learning process should be built around activities and leverage built upon the learner's prior knowledge. Now, if you don't know who your learner is before they show up, that's very difficult to do. So in a lot of the teaching and consulting I do, I talk just at length, at exhaustion, about knowing your learner, understanding that learner persona so that you know who you're encountering. This can include discussions, problem-solving, case studies, and hands-on projects, which all help to connect new information to existing mental frameworks, something that's missing for children. They don't have those formal mental frameworks. Third principle is relevance and practicality. The content and activities in our courses must be immediately relevant to the learner's life, work, or goals, or certainly be letting them know how it's going to get there. Educators should focus on practical problem solving rather than abstract theory, or that abstract theory should be leading to solving a problem. And this principle responds directly to the adult's need to know why they're learning something and then how it will help them down the road. And then the last one, and it's interesting, this one, I think it's often overlooked as kind of shallow or unimportant, but I actually think it's probably one of the most important principles of andragogy, and that is respect and collaboration. The learning environment should be characterized by mutual respect, by trust, and a spirit of collaboration. The educator acts as a facilitator or a guide rather than some sort of authoritarian figure, fostering a safe space where learners feel comfortable sharing experiences and opinions. Now, in my own lived experience as a consultant, I get a lot of folks who come to me and the very first thing they say is, we're really struggling cultivating community. And that could be online or in face-to-face teaching settings. And one of the first things I do is I ask them to tell me how they're cultivating safe, respectable space. Because if people don't feel safe, then they're not going to share about their lived experience. They're not going to feel inquisitive. They're not going to want to inquire more. They're not going to ask a question for fear that they could be shamed or laughed at or ignored. So that mutual respect, that safe space is really, really pivotal when we're working with adults. And I would say probably even more so online, because we have to be so much more intentional about how we cultivate that online safe space. So those are the 4 principles of andragogy that came out of Knoll's 6 assumptions about adult learners. As leaders in lifelong learning, the first and most important shift I think that we should be making is that as the designers of these experiences, we need to shift away from thinking about lifelong learning as a teacher-centered learning experience and into seeing it for what it truly is, which is a learner-centered experience, right? So then what does learner-centered design look like? Well, let's look at a couple of characteristics. This is not exhaustive, but a couple of key characteristics of a learner-centered design program. So the first one is the instructor acting as a facilitator or a lecturer? Instead of just dispensing information, when we're working with adults, educators like us should see our role as guiding and supporting the learner's journey. This involves designing learning experiences that are highly participatory, where the instructor facilitates discussion or provides resources and is helping learners connect new information to their existing knowledge. So we really are kind of holders of a sacred space in a respect. Next, that should then connect learning to practical application. Adult learners need to know how the knowledge or skill will be useful to them almost immediately. Therefore, all of our content must be explicitly linked to real-world problems or goals, and all of that should be clearly laid out in our learning outcomes. And this can be done through case studies or project-based work, even simulations where we allow our learners to apply what they've learned in real life. And I'm seeing more and more people do that by having people write out what a business meeting in a church might look like, write out what a sermon might look like, write out what conflict resolution among your deacons or your elders might look like, and actually practically applying these things that are very likely to happen in real ministry life. And this should all build on prior knowledge and experience, recognizing that the adult learner is not a blank slate, not looking to be poured into by an expert. We want to co-facilitate this space. We have things to offer, right? Actively solicit this expertise as the educator. Use it as a foundation for this new learning. Encourage that peer-to-peer learning and group discussion. And as a result, what you create is a collective learning experience that is much more powerful because the group is now educating one another and you're the facilitator of that unique experience. And in that, we have to foster a respectful and collaborative environment, right? We have to honor the adult learner's need for self-direction and to encourage them to share their experiences, but that only happens if we create a learning climate that is one of mutual respect and trust, right? And we've already talked about that. This means we need to treat learners as partners, right? I don't even call them students in my setting. I call them learners because that's what we're all doing. And oftentimes I'll refer to myself in the same way. You won't see anybody on my platform ever talking about an expert in this or that, because I think we all have a lot to learn. So instead, we're talking about partners in the educational process, valuing their opinions, creating safe space, encouraging genuine dialogue and inquiry, which means we as educators can't be fearful of critique. We can't be fearful for someone to say, hey, you said we should do X, but your entire course does Y. All of these help us be better educators, and it also helps the entire space learn together. And then lastly, I think this one is really valuable, especially in lifelong learning. I actually think it might be one of the reasons, Helen, why lifelong learning is so very popular, and that is because it provides options and flexibility. Adult learners have complex lives, right? Really complicated lives with a ton of commitments. If we know anything, we know that. Just try scheduling a Zoom call, and then you're going to learn about everybody's priorities immediately, right? So providing flexibility in scheduling, even learning formats. Is your course online, in person, hybrid? hyper flexible, all types of learning formats nowadays. And even our assessment methods can honor that autonomy. So allowing learners to choose topics or projects that align with their personal and professional interests, all of that increases their motivation and their engagement, and it ups retention rates drastically when they have that kind of autonomy. So what do we do with all of this? A little bit of a shift here as we think about the current day and age. What do we do with all this great learning, adult learning theory, given the emergence of AI, right? So here we've got this great theory we can follow, and we are nuancing it for online, but now we've got this kind of blockade in the road in some respects. I think the challenge before us with the emergence of AI is an interesting one because lifelong learning sits just outside the realm of degree granting programs, right? So we don't have the same expectations placed on us as degree granting programs in the way that we design and implement and assess our programs. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, right? We absolutely should assess our programs. We need to know about their impact. We need to know their overall effectiveness. We need to know if they're working for students and institutions. We need to be able to talk to granting agencies about what we're doing. We need to be able to demonstrate the worth of the course. So in that respect, like degree granting programs, we have a responsibility to address the impact of AI on our learners and create learning environments that ensure real learning is occurring. So currently, in the circles that I run in, both accreditation and higher education, AI detection software is not considered a best practice. Okay, now that doesn't negate the fact that we probably need AI policies and we need AI ethics in our institutions and programs, but the AI detection software itself is not generally seen as a best practice. And the reason for that is AI detection tools are often unreliable. We've seen more and more evidence recently in false positives and now false negatives. And most importantly, it fosters a culture of suspicion that then erodes that trust we just talked about that was so essential for adult learning. It creates some sort of surveillance culture that is counterproductive to a learner's self-concept and their desire for our autonomy. So separate in your mind the tool itself versus a policy that directs and informs learners about what's expected from your program or institution. So what do we do instead, right? So if we can't use the tools that are out there, most of them are cost prohibitive anyways. If that's not a best practice and we have a policy that's kind of vague that says you can and can't do this, how do we move forward? What's the best practice going forward in our respect? Well, instead, what I think is more useful, and I've talked in other circles about this, and if you were to take my entire theory and drop it into ChatGPT, yes, ChatGPT would argue it back to me. But I think there's some value in it, and that is that we need to stop thinking about catching learners who use AI and instead begin imagining how to design a curriculum where AI use would be pointless or less helpful to the learner. This approach creates what I call AI resistant learning environments that is meaningful and impactful by fostering deep wisdom and requiring higher order thinking. Think of Bloom's taxonomy there, higher order thinking of its learners. So we create learning experiences that the learner wants to engage with outside of AI for fear if they didn't, something really important or something really valuable would be lost. In other words, what we're creating here is a moment of FOMO, the fear of missing out. We want them to think, if I do this with AI, I'm missing something. I've not learned something. And the onus is on us as the designers to create that Kairos moment. So how do we do this? Well, there's lots of ways and all of them can be argued, but I think what we have to do is we have to create an AI resistant experience by doubling down on our andragogical principles, right? I mean, that sounds, trite at best, but I think there really is value to that. And again, it's not a foolproof approach. You could absolutely take some of these prompts that I'm talking about and you could drop them into OpenAI, you could drop them into Gemini, and you'll get a good enough response. But the question is good enough at best? And is the learner going to walk away from that going, wow, I kind of gypped myself a little bit. I think I cut myself short. And maybe next time I want to do this together with my peers because I think I'm missing something. So what are those? The first is that we should focus on relevance when we're designing. We need to design assessments that are so specific and tied to the learner's personal context that a generic AI response would be kind of useless or would just kind of fall flat, right? And as the educator, we need to recognize that, not by saying, oh, they used AI, but just saying, come on, Jeff, come on, Doris, give me a little more here. What does this really mean to you, right? And then we become the prompter, the facilitator of asking for more. So instead of asking for a definition, we ask them to apply a concept to a specific problem they're facing in their ministry or work. So we make it very personal to them, okay? Second thing is we emphasize process over product, okay? We value the learning journey, right? So as a result, we want them to value the process. So we need to ask learners to document this process, reflect on challenges they're having as they're going through our courses, explain their reasoning for why they did or didn't do this particular project in this way or respond in this way. We need to be collaborative and in conversation with our learners, because this makes it impossible for AI to simply generate a final paper and pass it off as their work, right? Because now we're in conversation with them, we're learning alongside them. The third would be, if possible, in the context of the way you've designed your course, is to prioritize some sort of in-person or live interaction, kind of like what we're doing here. So use assessments that require some sort of on-the-spot critical thinking. I could simply look at Jeff and say, Jeff, what do you think about X? AI can't generate that. He'd have to frantically type because that's a prompt, spontaneous moment, right? So critical thinking on the spot, discussion forums allow for this, some sort of in-class presentation. Oral exams are, debatable, but some sort of live debate about something. People love to debate things, but not giving all of that ahead of time allows them to kind of think spontaneously about how they think. And it makes it almost impossible for AI to replicate this spontaneous, nuanced, empathetic communication that we're asking for as educators. And so if your course allows for it, working some of that as live components in can be really meaningful. And then the last one is incorporate collaboration. So encourage group projects where learning happens through some sort of required peer interaction. Some sort of shared problem solving. I know we all kind of probably hated group projects growing up, but especially with online, it facilitates a different type of learning where an individual could use AI, absolutely, in a group project, but the collaborative dynamic of a team means that it makes it harder and harder to rely on it exclusively. It encourages them to kind of collaborate first with their colleagues before they go, writing on OpenAI or asking Gemini what they think about this. So by creating learning environments that are inherently experiential, problem-based, and human-centered, we ensure that the adult learner sees value in the work itself, which really is our goal, I think. And we end up moving past the fear of AI, and we embrace our role as facilitators of a learning process that AI can only assist with, but never truly replace. So that's a lot in a short period of time, but we started with Malcolm Knowles and his distinction between pedagogy and andragogy. We looked at the 6 assumptions he made about adult learners, and that led us then to the 4 principles. And applying these principles, we can move beyond a traditional content delivery model, which unfortunately I'm seeing a lot of online learning that's just content delivery. It's not an engaged learning experience. We can move past that into a more dynamic and respectful and effective learning environment for adult learners in lifelong learning programs. And this is critical because of the day and age we're in, right? Technology is evolving so fast. Things like AI require that we design to be inherently human and inherently collaborative. So I think we have both a challenge and an opportunity before us to shift our focus from what we're teaching to how we can empower our learners to take ownership of their own educational journey. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want them to do. We want them to say, I've met my need, but we've done that with authentic learning. So I'm going to pause because I think the collective knowledge in the room is also super valuable. And I'm going to unshare my screen so I can see your incredible chats. And I want to know what you have to say. What's on your mind? And if you're new to this, I want to encourage you to the front. Sit at the front seat, because there's a lot of collective wisdom in this room that I think we could all kind of talk together about what some of these questions are. So I'm going to pause here and say, what questions do you have? Or what thoughts or feedback do you have?
You can just go ahead and unmute, since we've got a small enough group here so that we don't really need to use the raise hand function, and share your thoughts. Except for Adrian, of course, whose mic isn't working, so he's going to have to put his stuff in the chat, and I've got you, friend.
Excellent.
Is it working now?
Ah, yes, excellent. Hi.
Okay. I plugged in the microphone. What do you know?
Excellent. So who's first? What's on your mind? How did that strike you? And if this is all new to you, wonderful. We're glad you're here.
Let Adrian go first because he wasn't able to share at the beginning.
Good point, Doris.
I guess we still use an online format to teach. So how would you break down a typical hour or an hour and 15 minutes if you wanted to incorporate some of these experiential, this type of learning?
That's a great question. Anyone in the room want to respond? I'm happy to. Daryl, how would you respond to that?
Sure. I think that's a great question. In my program, one of the things we emphasize is a flipped curriculum, or inverted pedagogy, sometimes called, so that the content comes first asynchronously, and then the Zoom session or the interactive part then is not lecture or content based, it's process and application based. And so if there's a lecture, we record the lecture and we put it online. If there's a reading or or more, work through these concepts, we do that asynchronously. Then when we get to a Zoom session, all right, let's talk about what we learned. What are the challenges? What are the applications, difficulties? And so that learning is the collaborative part that's in the classroom, interactive classroom space.
Thank you, Daryl. Anybody else?
That's exactly the structure we're going to be using with an online class through the CLL this evening that I'll be hosting with our instructor. She's been engaging people asynchronously through the online platform throughout the week, and she's asking them to come to the convened session this evening with some materials for discussion. So the priority is to, if you've got the treasure, the gift of having people with busy schedules convened at the same time, what is there about that gathering that can only be done in that kind of a space? Content delivery you can do multiple ways, but the kind of processing that Daryl's talking about is best done, the relationship building might be best done in the live session.
Adrian, I do a lot of teaching I'm teaching a course right now on course design, one on curriculum development, on online teaching. And what I find that's really valuable in that setting is modeling what I'm talking about. And so if I say, then we should be very clear about our learning outcomes, and I'm going to talk about that. If I have a live session with the asynchronous content, I'm going to talk about and lean in on those learning outcomes. And so I try to model what I'm teaching almost to a redundancy, to the point that oftentimes in evaluations, I'll have learners say things like, I get it, you modeled it perfectly, almost to a redundancy, so that it really drives it home, especially in training courses in matters like that. The other is to, when we model things, is also doing that in community. I think sometimes as educators, we kind of stand back, that old model where you kind of stand back in the classroom and you will watch the young people think, watch the young people work. And really, they want us in it with them, especially adult learners, especially lifelong learning. They want to see how we're grappling with the issues as well. And I even do that with assessment. Throughout my courses, I'll say, so how are we feeling now? How are things landing? Are you stressed out? Are you overwhelmed? Are you excited? And letting them offer feedback that I'm making course tweaks right in, right at week 3 of a 9-week course because of that immediate feedback that I'm getting. So I think that I'm kind of correcting course in real time, but also trying to modeling what I'm teaching at the same time. So if I expect them to chat, I'm going to chat too. Anybody else? Great question. And I work, Adrian, in a largely online format too. Most of my consulting and all of the work I do is in an online format.
I have the
Yes, Doris.
experience to have the asynchronous, completely asynchronous, and one that is asynchronous and a point Zoom gathering. And the experience is very different from one to the other. For the asynchronous, the way that we can get together is through the discussions, places that we have there. And we usually give, if you are able to be, at certain hours, that will be better. If you can, that's okay. I open it. And then I used to encourage them to respond as soon as they see the engagement, the other questions or discussion to get there. And I get there also. And I give a little bit of my response to the discussion question or what they are talking about, but I held back and I ask a question. How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? And I get the discussion very uplifted. That's asynchronous. With the online, when we are together, I give 15, not more than 20 minutes of maybe content, but with stops of questions, like 3 minutes. And, let's all come here. What do you think? Da 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 da. Okay, let's go on. And then I always give a couple of 5 to 7 minutes of group talking, group engagement. And that's part of the class also, that everything that they discuss, I just write it down, and I think this is very great. This will help you in what ways, and then we get on with the discussion. But the dividing the hour in different type of activities to engage the people in there, it usually works for me.
Great advice. Great advice. Another thing that I do is I separate the social from the learning when it comes to discussion, especially if it's a fully asynchronous course. I'll have, and my LMS affords me this space, but I don't know if everyone's does, but I have a chat room we call communities of practice where people get to know each other. They'll share resources, they'll chat, they'll do funny memes. We posted something about, VHS is going out the window, and there were a lot of Gen Xers in the room that could resonate. And then over here, there's a discussion about the content, but it allows the opportunity for them to create that rapport, but not get all that caught up in the learning process. So we have a chat function within the course, but then we have a whole separate section where they can kind of get to know each other, and that lives on past the course. So in our lifelong learning, we're creating these small communities of practice. They can choose to engage or not, but it lives on past the course. All right, great question. Let's see if somebody else has, what's on your mind? Somebody else.
I'll pipe up actually with something that I was thinking about as you were talking. I was thinking about how one of the number one problems people who are educators come to a session like this with often has to do with content delivery or how to motivate the unmotivated. Like how do we get them to do X? And one of the things that was occurring to me as you were talking about what motivates the adult learner is that they are self-motivated. And if there's an issue with motivation, it might have to do with the structure of the learning experience or some kind of external mandate that's been placed on them that requires them to be there when they don't want to be. So anyways, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the motivation piece. Because for those of us who run these elective lifelong learning programs, part of what we're doing is being in the business of trying to sell things that people have to desire, they have to want, or maybe
Yeah.
they don't even know they need sometimes. So talk a little bit about motivation.
Yeah, totally. Definitely no expert in this, but let me start with a question. How many of you have had asynchronous courses online that you've offered in your lifelong learning programs, and you've had a ton of people sign up and then like 5 people show up? Right? Or you've had a ton of people show up and they'll all start, but within 2 weeks, they're all like gone and you're down to like your solid 7 or your solid 3, right? So one, this is very characteristic of asynchronous learning, but it also speaks to, I think, the adult learner who's overwhelmed, but they look at a title and a description and they say, I need that. But then they have no self-direction or self-control over their own time and how they're spending it. And this is also quite common, right? When we put people into an asynchronous environment, for example, we're putting a lot of responsibility on them to manage their time well, to just, I'll just stop there, manage their time well. And we're just not good at that when we have so many responsibilities already. I mean, everyone in this room had like 3 titles. Daryl, I think you have like 6. Every time I see you, you have a new title. And this speaks to your brilliance, but it also speaks to just what the world is like for so many of us right now. And so I instead of I used to get really upset when that would happen and be like, where are you? You paid your money and you're not getting it back, but where are you? And being kind of upset because I know it's kind of taking away from other learners that they're not there. But now I see it much more empathetically, that really they see that title, they see that description, something spoke to them, but they're just not able to engage. And so it actually, for me, I've looked now at motivation, less trying to kind of convince them to sign up and instead being very realistic, even in the way I talk about my courses, Helen, about like, hey, huge motivation here to sign up, but this is what's practical. It's going to take 7 to 10 hours a week for this course for you to get through it. And I've also started putting limitations on the certificate. So like, okay, you don't have to finish synchronously with everybody, but if you're not done within 6 weeks, like it's closing. And this is helping, I think, some of those motivations, which is, I really want to take the course, but I really don't know how to manage my time well, or I'm totally overextended, and I actually should not have shown up at all. So I think it answers your question a little bit about motivation, but also trying to help that motivation, which is, there's just some things we're not good at. And it's one thing if you're going to go watch the recording later or take the class later, but when you're signing up for a synchronous course, or you're expected to be there live and you're just never showing up, like, how can I help you make a different choice about maybe signing up for that class and make it less about capitalism and a little bit more about helping the learner? So that's just one perspective. I'm interested in others of you. What are you doing with learner motivation? Are you having a hard time with learner motivation? Struggling to get people motivated?
So this might be a different context. So this was in the class I taught at a graduate school in the university, and 4 credits for degree program. So that itself already provides accountability system, I guess. But anyway, so it was fully asynchronous. So I mean, I myself struggle with the issue that Helen raised for sure. I mean, how do I motivate myself? So one thing we did in the course was from the beginning, I sign up randomly peer learners. So it's part of the requirement that these peer learners, they need to engage one another either by 2 or 3. It's a small class. Like it's not required to be done on weekly, but it's designed towards the development of a final paper, and then that paper is based on the content that's scaffolding the entire semester. So then they need to submit a report of their peer meeting. Mm-hmm. Then, according to the course feedback, the students said, or the learner, I appreciate the point about naming them as learners. These are 4 adults. The participants said that's the most enjoyment, also the most learning of facilitated part that they experienced in the class. I just want to mention that.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah, I love that too, where people are taking responsibility for the structure of their own learning experience, not just for their own motivation, but for creating the thing together with you as the lead instructor. We're getting close on time, Lindsay. Any last things that you want to share before we have to wrap things up in 5 minutes?
I do have some final thoughts, but I just want to acknowledge I saw a hand with Rebecca.
Oh,
Rebecca, you
that's
want to
right,
share something
Rebecca.
briefly?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm finding this very helpful. I've been teaching a course on Baptist polity that's primarily attended by either new to the denomination, new to American Baptist life, pastors, or ordination candidates. So they are highly motivated, most of them, because they can't do their ordination without the requirement. But I've had a lot of requests for more flexible options. I've been doing it as a synchronous 6-week course, and a lot of folks are asking for it asynchronously. So this has been very helpful in helping me think about how to adapt the content for both options. And try to find, because one of the values I experience in doing the course synchronously is we're also building a community of new pastors. So if you want to talk about a community of learners and you want the continuing education, having them connect with each other in a meaningful way is a part of the gift of the course. So it's just very helpful. I do want to just put a footnote that andragogy is great, as long as we also don't forget that what's good for children is also good for adult learners when it comes to multiple intelligences and learning styles and
Repetition, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly.
I'd add snacks and nap
Absolutely.
time to that too.
Totally.
Snacks and
Yes.
nap time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. I'm gonna just share my screen again so that folks can know how to contact us. But I just want to say thank you. I think experiences like this are wonderful because we get to share and learn from one another and what everybody's trying in different spaces. And I think sometimes it's really important to kind of get back to the basics and remember who it is we're dealing with and how it is that we can go about some basic practices and then nuance and riff from there. And this is a valuable time because of each of you and the ways in which you shared. So I just want to say thank you for that. And on the screen here is information. Please reach out to Alam. We've got more of this stuff coming every single month. We've got an incredible cast of folks that are at Alam. I keep extending my time at Alam, and anytime they need a role, I keep saying, I'll stay on the board, because I just find this collection of colleagues so stimulating in this work. I do my work better because of them, and my hope would be that you would as well. And then also, if you'd like to get in contact with me directly, I'd be happy to talk to you. But thank you, each of you, for this space. Helen, do you have any?
Yeah, actually, if you could pull down that screen, I'll go ahead and share mine and give folks sense of what is coming up. So you guys should see the Alam home screen right now. If you go to this, go under membership and click on calendar. This gives you all of the upcoming webinars. The two that I want to point out to you coming up next month, I'll be in conversation with Debbie Jin from the Association of Theological Schools about their workforce data. In other words, how effective was seminary education for people who are doing ministry? Spoiler alert, minimally helpful. And what we're going to talk about is what this means for those of us who do lifelong learning. And then on the 26th, the next week, we'll be doing our quarterly community of practice. Aaron Stauffer is going to be leading that one for us. These are free. Please send the word out. You can be a member. You don't have to be a member. Just join us. The recordings of things are always going to be behind the member portal, but the actual live experience is open to everyone. And if you feel compelled, do think about joining us and being part of our community of practice. Like I said, we're the think tank, resource provider, and community of practice for people who do this kind of work. And it's a delight to be with you. And Lindsay, thank you so much again. It's always such joy to have you leading one of these events for us. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.